Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you deep into a truth rarely spoken, yet silently felt in every step of your journey. People envy you not for what you have, but for who you are becoming. Let's start by understanding the psychology of envy. Envy is not about hatred, it's about unfulfilled potential. When someone sees you rise, what they're actually witnessing is a mirror, a reflection of what they could have been had they chosen differently. Your success, your growth, your persistence, these aren't the cause of their bitterness, they're the reminders of the roads they refused to walk. People don't usually envy your material possessions or surface-level achievements. Those are just symbols, reflections of something deeper. What they truly envy is your growth, your transformation, the fact that you had the courage to break cycles, step into uncertainty, and demand more from life. You see, most people live in a state of quiet resignation. They carry around dreams they've buried under excuses, habits they never fixed, and opportunities they let slip away. So when you begin to rise, when you begin to evolve, it disrupts the equilibrium they've built around mediocrity. You become a living contradiction to their comfort zone. You may not realize it, but your very presence can disturb the peace of those who have settled. This is because personal growth is not just about becoming better, it's about becoming different. And that difference is felt by others, often before it's fully visible. When you grow mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or professionally, you change the frequency of your presence. You think differently, speak differently, and behave differently. And people around you feel that shift. Here's what happens psychologically. When someone sees you improving, their brain doesn't just admire you. It compares. That comparison becomes a conflict. Why is he doing so well when I'm still stuck? Why is she evolving while I'm still repeating the same patterns? That question rarely turns into motivation. More often, it turns into envy, and this envy is often quiet, subtle. It's not always verbalized. It's not the dramatic kind you see in movies. It may show up in backhanded compliments, distant energy, sudden silence, or passive-aggressive behavior, but make no mistake, it's envy nonetheless. It's not about you being wrong. It's about you doing something they didn't have the strength to do. Here's a fundamental truth about growth. It is disruptive, not just to your own routine, but to the relationships around you. When you break your limitations, you also break the unspoken contracts you had with people. Contracts that said, we'll all stay the same so nobody feels uncomfortable, but you didn't honor that contract. You chose truth over comfort, evolution over fitting in, and because of that, you changed the dynamics. Your growth silently asks others, why haven't you changed? And that question can be very uncomfortable for someone who has avoided change for years. That's why many people would rather distance themselves from you than face the discomfort of their own inaction. It's easier to mock, ignore, or even resent you than to look in the mirror and confront their own stagnation. Your actions become an unintentional challenge to the narrative they've told themselves. I can't, it's too late, I don't have time, or I'm just not that kind of person. When you prove that it is possible, you expose those narratives as lies. That kind of exposure is powerful, but it's also painful. This is why people may secretly envy you even if you've never harmed them, never competed with them, and never even spoken a word of judgment. You don't have to say a thing, your very life speaks, and it speaks loud. People don't envy laziness. People don't envy hesitation. People don't envy those who stay in the same place for years. They envy motion. They envy growth. They envy courage, especially when that courage is quiet and consistent, especially when that growth is self-made. You may be wondering, but I'm still on the journey. I haven't even reached the success I'm aiming for. Why would someone envy me now? That's exactly why. Because it's not about your destination. It's about your decision. You decided to start. You decided to try. You decided to change. And most people never make that decision. So they envy your bravery. They envy your effort. They envy your momentum. And here's another layer. The closer people are to you, emotionally, socially, historically, the more likely they are to envy your growth. Strangers will support you more easily because your evolution doesn't challenge their identity. But friends, family, old classmates, they remember who you used to be, and when you start to outgrow that version, it threatens their sense of familiarity. It's as if you've broken an unspoken agreement. You were supposed to stay like us. You were supposed to play small, too, but you didn't. So now they're uncomfortable, not because you're better, but because you're braver, and bravery is contagious. It spreads, but not everyone is ready to catch it. Some would rather stay safe in fear than risk the vulnerability required to grow. So what should you do? You do nothing to please envy. You do nothing to shrink for the comfort of others. You simply understand. You understand that your growth will cost you some relationships, not because you're cruel, but because your evolution became incompatible with their stagnation. You outgrew conversations, not people. You outgrew old limits, not old friends. If anything, let their envy be confirmation that you're moving. Let it remind you that your life is proof. Proof that change is possible, that dreams can be activated, that potential is real. And here's what most won't tell you. Some of the very people who envy you today will one day admire you silently or publicly, because deep down they wish they had your courage. They wish they had your fire. And when they finally choose to evolve themselves, they'll remember the example you set. So be the example, be the evidence, keep growing, keep rising, because your growth is not just for you. It's a message to the world. I didn't settle, you don't have to either. And if they envy you for that, let them. You've given them something to wake up to. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in human behavior, often confused with arrogance, misinterpreted as ego, or dismissed as luck. True confidence is something rare and powerful. It's not about being louder than others. It's about being louder than your fears. It's not about being perfect. It's about knowing you're worthy even while you're still imperfect. And for many people, that level of self-assurance is deeply unsettling. When you walk into a room confident in who you are, even if you haven't made it, yet by society's standards, your energy speaks before you do. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. It radiates from the inside out. You stand tall not because you think you're better, but because you know you're becoming better every single day. That quiet, internal belief in yourself becomes your armor. And for people who haven't built that kind of armor, your presence becomes a threat. Why? Because your confidence reflects what they don't have but secretly wish they did. You must understand that insecurity is often masked behind different behaviors. Defensiveness, mockery, withdrawal, or even passive-aggressive criticism. It wears disguises, but its root is always the same. It feels exposed in the presence of real confidence. Imagine two people in a conversation. One has worked on themselves, faced their fears, rebuilt their self-image, and walks with grounded humility. The other is unsure of their worth, deeply afraid of being seen as not enough, and reliant on external validation for a sense of identity. Now put them in the same room. The one with confidence doesn't need to dominate or prove anything, but their very being shines a spotlight on the internal chaos of the insecure one, not because they intend to, but because they exist in contrast. This contrast is uncomfortable, and discomfort, unless dealt with maturely, turns into resistance. That's why people might dismiss your confidence with statements like, "You've changed," "You think you're better than everyone," "You're so full of yourself," "You always have something to say." But none of these statements are actually about you. They are about the insecurity they feel in relation to you. You see, true confidence isn't boastful, it's not loud, it doesn't need an audience. It's built in silence, through repeated promises kept to yourself, through scars turned into lessons, and through showing up again and again even after you failed. Confidence is earned through self-respect, not praise. When you respect yourself, you speak with intention. You carry yourself with grace. You don't over-apologize for existing. You don't shrink for approval. That is intimidating to people who have built their identities around pleasing others or seeking validation. But the most threatening thing about your confidence, it can't be taken away. It's not borrowed from titles, money, followers, or status. It was built brick by brick from the inside, which means no one can touch it, unless you give them permission. For those still living in self-doubt, this kind of internal security is foreign. It confronts their habits of self-criticism. It challenges their stories of "I'm not enough." And when someone's internal story is, "I need others to tell me I'm worthy," your unshakable self-worth reads like an insult, even though it isn't. It's just the truth staring them in the face. That's why you'll notice something interesting the more you grow in your confidence, the more uncomfortable certain people become around you. Not because you've become aggressive or proud, but because you've become centered. You've stopped guessing yourself. You've stopped seeking permission. You've stopped making yourself small to fit in. That shift changes the room. You start to carry presence, and presence is power. You might not even realize the effect you have on others. You might be thinking, "I'm just doing my best. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad." And that's exactly the point. Your mere existence in self-alignment forces others to face where they've misaligned themselves, and if they're not ready to face that, they project their discomfort back at you. So, what can you do about it? You don't dim your light. You don't lower your standards. You don't become smaller to make others feel taller. You stay rooted. You keep showing up as your authentic self. Because every step you take in self-confidence gives silent permission to others who are watching you, some in envy, yes, but others in secret admiration. There are people who will mock you in public and mirror you in private. People who will act unaffected, yet take notes on how you speak, how you walk, how you stand firm, and you must remember this. Your confidence is not just a tool for success. It's a signal. It tells the world what's possible when someone believes in themselves enough to act. Your life becomes a case study in self-trust that's more powerful than you think. So when people act cold, distant, or critical of your newfound confidence, don't be discouraged. Be aware. Realize that their reactions are not reflections of your flaws. They're reflections of their own wounds. And if you ever start to question yourself because of their discomfort, pause and remember this. People will try to shame what they don't understand. They will criticize what they cannot control. They will resist what they fear becoming. But you are not responsible for managing their fear. You are responsible for honoring your growth. Confidence is a silent revolution. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg. It simply says, "I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to be seen." And in a world full of masks, that level of honesty is radical. It's rare, it's revolutionary, and yes, it's threatening, but that's their battle to fight, not yours. Discipline is not just a habit, it's a declaration. It's you standing up every day and making a silent promise to yourself. I will show up, whether I feel like it or not. And while most people celebrate motivation and inspiration, what really builds an exceptional life is this quiet, repetitive act of discipline. But here's the hidden truth. Your discipline doesn't just build your future, it disrupts others' illusions. It makes people uncomfortable because it strips away the excuses they've depended on for years. Every time you wake up early, every time you say no to distractions, every time you work when others are resting, you're not just moving forward. You're sending a message. That message says, "It can be done." And that truth is hard to digest for someone who's convinced themselves that it can't. That's why people might downplay your commitment. They might say you're too serious or missing out on life, or that you should relax a little, but what they're really doing is trying to protect their comfort. Because your discipline puts pressure on their comfort zone, it makes them question their patterns, their laziness, their procrastination, and that's a mirror most people don't want to look into. You see, excuses are comforting. They help people rationalize their lack of progress. I don't have time. I'm too tired, it's not the right moment. These become emotional cushions, softening the reality that they simply haven't chosen discipline. But when they watch you push through the same obstacles, working a full-time job, raising a family, going through challenges, and still staying consistent, they realize that the problem was never circumstance. The problem was their commitment. That's what stings. That's what causes the envy. Because your discipline removes their favorite hiding place, you become the living contradiction to their excuses. You become living proof that effort, repeated daily, creates transformation. That's why you'll notice some people grow distant, not because you've wronged them, but because your existence makes them rethink their decisions. It challenges the stories they've been telling themselves. It's often said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But that's not just a catchy quote. It's a truth that disciplines the ego. There are people more talented than you, with more resources, more advantages, more support. But they don't have your fire, they don't have your consistency, and that realization is difficult to accept when someone's entire identity is built around potential they've never used. So instead of reflecting and growing, what do many people do? They criticize, they gossip, they minimize, they say things like, they're lucky, they're obsessed, they're trying too hard, they're doing too much. But luck didn't build your life, discipline did. Luck didn't help you grow through seasons of doubt and fatigue. Discipline did. Luck didn't make you show up again after failure, heartbreak, rejection, and disappointment. Discipline did, and that's what people don't see. The cost behind the scenes. The sacrifices, the nights of self-doubt, the moments you could have quit but didn't, because discipline isn't glamorous. It's quiet, it's boring, it's lonely, but it works. That's why some of the most successful, fulfilled people aren't the ones with the most hype. They're the ones with the most consistency, people who chose to build brick by brick while others were waiting for the perfect time, and that's what separates you. You stopped waiting, you started building, you didn't need applause, you needed alignment, and as you continue down this path, you'll find that the more consistent you become, the more people will try to shake that consistency. Not always directly, sometimes through subtle doubts, distractions, or even well-meaning suggestions to slow down. But remember, not all advice is wise, and not all concern is care. Some of it is simply fear disguised as guidance. Because when people see you elevate through effort, they are forced to reevaluate their effort, or the lack of it, and most would rather maintain their image than do the internal work it takes to change. But here's the truth. You owe no one an explanation for your discipline. You don't need to justify your grind, your routine, your commitment. You're not obsessed. You're devoted. There's a difference. Obsessed is reckless, devoted is focused. Obsessed ignores life, devoted builds a life, and you're building with purpose, with patience, with precision. So let them talk, let them roll their eyes, let them joke about your habits, your early mornings, your structured life. Because the very people who dismiss you today will one day ask you how you did it, and you'll know exactly what to say. I stopped making excuses. I started choosing discipline. And that discipline, it built a version of you that no excuse could ever reach. It created a life that no shortcut could ever replicate. It gave you a power that no opinion could ever take away. Remember, the world doesn't reward intention. It rewards action. It doesn't move for those who want, it moves for those who work. So keep showing up. Keep choosing the harder path. Keep embracing the structure that most people avoid, because in a world full of distractions and delay, your discipline is your superpower. And yes, it will make others uncomfortable, because it reveals what they've been hiding behind, but that's not your burden, that's their awakening, and the longer you stay consistent, the more your life becomes undeniable proof of what's possible. So let them feel what they feel, while you keep becoming who you're meant to be. There is something undeniably powerful about a person who decides to live in their truth. Someone who no longer hides, no longer shrinks, and no longer edits themselves for the comfort of others. When you choose to step fully into your light, to live with authenticity, courage, and purpose, you do something that most people are afraid to do. You stop performing and start existing, and in doing so, you don't just illuminate your path, you cast light on the darkness others are avoiding. That's when resistance begins, because your light doesn't just shine, it reveals discomfort, it reveals contradiction, it reveals insecurity. When you show up as whole and unapologetic, you awaken a sense of inner tension in those who are still wearing masks. You don't mean to. You're not trying to make anyone feel small. You're just being you. But for someone who's lived their life in hiding, your freedom feels like a confrontation. People get used to pretending. Pretending to be happy, pretending to be confident, pretending to be fulfilled. They become attached to their masks, not because they enjoy them, but because the mask protects them from judgment, exposure, and vulnerability. Then someone like you comes along, someone who speaks from the heart, lives with integrity, walks in clarity, and dares to be authentic, and that disrupts the illusion they've built. The truth is, when you stop dimming yourself, you will inevitably cast light on everything around you. And some people will be grateful for that light. They will use it to see themselves more clearly. They will feel inspired, empowered, awakened, but others will feel exposed, not by anything you said or did, but simply because your presence calls out what they've been avoiding. Your confidence may remind someone of their insecurities. Your joy may remind someone of their sadness. Your alignment may remind someone of their confusion. Your clarity may challenge someone's chaos. Not because you're better, not because you're trying to be superior, but because you're free, and freedom is one of the most powerful and confronting forces on this earth. It shines a light on the chains people still wear, even if those chains are invisible. This is why some people will distance themselves from you when you rise, not because you've harmed them, but because you've triggered something in them. You've reminded them of everything they still haven't faced, everything they're still denying, everything they wish they had the courage to change. Your presence becomes a silent mirror, and not everyone is ready to look into that mirror. You may notice the shift. Someone who once cheered for you now grows quiet. Someone who once supported your journey now questions your motives. Someone who once admired your spark now seems irritated by your energy. Don't let that confuse you. They are not reacting to your truth. They are reacting to the distance between your truth and their untruth. You must understand that light doesn't only illuminate beauty, it exposes shadows. And exposure is uncomfortable, it's vulnerable, but that's what growth requires, to face what's hidden, to bring the unconscious into awareness, to stop pretending and start healing. When you begin to heal, when you start walking in alignment, you send a message without saying a word. It's possible. And while that message is empowering to some, it's threatening to others. Because it removes the illusion that they have no choice, that they're stuck, that it's too late, that nothing can change, you become evidence that those beliefs aren't facts, they're habits, and people protect their habits fiercely, especially the ones that have become part of their identity. If someone has worn the mask of victimhood or denial for years, your presence can feel like pressure. Even if you offer nothing but love and encouragement, they may interpret your authenticity as arrogance, your ambition as selfishness, your joy as naivety. That's not your fault. You are not responsible for how people respond to your healing. You are only responsible for staying true to the light that called you in the first place. The moment you begin to live in that light, you'll understand how rare it is. You'll also understand why some people would rather live in darkness. It's not because they enjoy suffering. It's because darkness is predictable. It's familiar, and the unfamiliar, though freeing, is terrifying. You represent a possibility they've not yet accepted, and possibility always carries risk. It demands change, it demands effort, it demands accountability, and not everyone is ready for that journey. But you are, you chose it, and every step you take into the light makes it a little easier for someone else to follow. So don't hide, don't apologize, don't explain your glow to those still learning to see. Not everyone will understand your energy, not everyone will clap for your transformation, and not everyone will walk with you when you rise. That's okay, you're not shining to be liked, you're shining to be real. Your light is not arrogance, it's not ego, it's the result of deep personal work that most people will never witness and some may never understand, but you did the work, you went through the fire. You let go of old identities, you faced the truth when it was easier to lie to yourself. You chose evolution over comfort, and now you walk in a light that was earned. That light will attract the right people, those who are also seeking truth, growth, and authenticity. And yes, it will repel others, those who are not yet ready to face themselves, but both are signs that you are standing where you're meant to be. Let your light do what it's meant to do, illuminate, uplift. Disrupt, awaken. If it challenges their shadows, so be it. The world needs less pretending, and more people bold enough to live in truth. Be one of those people, because when you shine without fear, you don't just change your life, you give others permission to change theirs too. So, why do people secretly envy you? Not because of what you own, but because of who you are becoming. Your growth reminds them of everything they've postponed. Your confidence exposes their deepest insecurities. Your discipline invalidates their excuses, and your light, your truth, shines too brightly for the shadows they still choose to live in. You didn't set out to make anyone uncomfortable. You set out to be better, for yourself, for your future, for the life you know you're meant to live. But when you rise, you inevitably challenge what others have settled for, and in doing so, you become a mirror, reflecting back to them their untapped potential and unhealed parts. Some will respect that mirror. Some will resent it, but none of that is yours to carry. You must remember, their envy is not a reflection of your ego, it is a reflection of their inner battle between who they are and who they could be. So do not dim your light, do not soften your discipline, do not apologize for your confidence, do not shrink your growth. Every step forward you take is not just a victory for you, it's an invitation for someone else to rise. You are not the problem, you are the proof, and if your journey awakens discomfort in others, let it also awaken possibility. Keep becoming, keep building, keep shining, because the world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs more people like you, willing to stand out, unapologetically.